Well, welcome. My name is Peter here at Rev Rabbits, and I'd like to talk to you today about some nest box basics. The types of nest boxes that I have used over the years, what has worked for me, and just some tips and tricks when it comes to nest boxes and their use in construction. First of all, I have a couple samples here with me, and I like wood. And the reason I like wood is that it's easy. They're easy to make, and they're more natural for the rabbits. I know some people use metal ones, but I find that very unnatural for the rabbits. So I have wood ones, and they're quite large for the New Zealand and Californian. I have a smaller one here, and I'll talk about it. So basically, I start out with the bottom, and I make the bottom 8 inches by 18 inches. And then I build the ends, and I make them 8 inches wide, and 9 3/4 at the top. And so you'll see that they're wedged here in a shape. So it's a little bit wider at the top, and then I just build this little hook in here to make it for the dough to come in and out a little bit easier. This is only about 1.5 inches down, and so there's still a fair distance here for the kits to stay in the box. Now, one of the first things about making a nest box is you want to make sure that it fits in your door. Now, I have a 24 by 36 kindling pen here. This is what most people have. I'll show you some other pens that I use for kindling. And you have to make sure that the nest box fits in the door. And place it in the cage, and usually put it in one of the corners. Now, when you put it in the corner, some does may not like it. You might have to put it in the other corner. Usually what I look is where the droppings are and put the nest box in the other corner, opposite of where they've been putting their droppings. Now, in constructing these nest boxes, one of the things that I found out, especially with the larger breed rabbits, is that if the nest box is not heavy enough, when the dough comes out the end here, or the side rather, if the nest box is not heavy enough, it will tip over and you'll lose your kits, and just creates a problem. To overcome that, what I found is the bottom and the ends I make out of at least 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch plywood. The sides are just the 3/8, and that gives it enough stability that the dough cannot knock the nest box over. That has worked for me. Make the nest box heavy. They'll last a long time. When it's time to clean them out, and I'll talk about that in a minute, is to clean them out, wash them out, and put them in the sun. And a wood nest box you'll use for years and years that way. The sun does an amazing thing at disinfecting. So again, just to recap, make sure it fits in the door. Make sure they're heavy enough that they don't tip over, and that for the breed you're using, that they're large enough. So I have a smaller one here when I use smaller breeds. And I had Florida whites. They're half the size of a New Zealand or a Cal. And so I use a smaller nest box. It's still 8 inches wide. It's still the same height. It's just about 3 inches shorter in length. And make it 15 instead of 18. And then on these I've also, and you can do this for the other breeds as well, is I just put a top on here. This is a resting place. The kits will sit on there. The dough will sit on there sometimes. It just gives them something else to do. Same idea on the end. And it's a smaller nest box, smaller breed. And the reason you want a smaller nest box is that you want a smaller nest box because if it's too large, they'll spread their kits around and they won't necessarily all get fed when it's feeding time. Okay, so we're here with a temporary setup that I set up just to show you. These are kindling cages. They're not two-tier like the last set where with the front loading with the door at the front. These are a one-tier, and the doughs come in and out from the top. Now this was more for my Florida whites. They're only 18 by 36, but I also have cages like this, and I call them my kindling pens, that are 24 by 36. But instead of wide 36, they're deep 36, and because I can open them at the top, I can get the rabbit anywhere that is necessary. Now we're actually at the back of the cage. The feeder's at the front. I put the nest box on the back, and you'll see that they're a hanging nest box, and the doors So there's just hooks on there's the slot. It's a 6x6 slot. The nest box is basically 13 inches deep, 6 inches down from the top is the cut, 6 inches across. That's big enough for New Zealand to get in, no problem at all. And 7 inches to the bottom of the floor. So same idea as the last. I make my floor first, and it's about 8 by 16, 17, 18, whatever you want, and then I make them 13, 14 inches deep. The deeper it goes, it doesn't matter from the slot here. The key is that when you hook it on, you see these doors slide open and shut. When you hook it on, that the door is in the right spot. These are 6x6 cutouts here as well. You can see 6x6 cutouts. And the reason I do this, and the commercial guys do this too, is because that you can control going into the nest box. You shut the door, and when you shut the door, the doe can't get in nor bother you when you're trying to look at the litter. And so I have a hinge here, and what you'll see is I have a wood top here, and there's wire as well. And the reason for that is the wood top I put on temporarily. In the winter I leave it, but in the summer, rabbit loves to go into a dark place to have their litter. And so this makes a very dark spot. And then once she has her litter, and it's summertime and very hot, so all I have is a board on the back here, and I just put a screw down through the bottom. The litter, and it's warm out, I just take that off, and simple like that, and then it's open, and very airy, and yet you can still, I have a spring-loaded clothes here. It's just a spring I put over, and that keeps it from coming up. I usually keep them open most of the time. I put the lid here onto the door, and I only shut it when I need to go in and check the litter. Now the commercial guys keep the door shut all the time, and once a day they'll open up and let the does feed. Did you know they only feed once a day? Only takes a couple minutes, maybe 3 at the most. I've done it. I've kept the doors shut, opened them up, and they'll feed them only once a day. And I've opened it up other times to see if they'll go in again. They won't go in. They'll just feed once a day, night or morning, and they'll get into routine. But I would leave mine open all the time, unless the doe was one of those that always like to sit on the litter. You get those once in a while. With the other nest boxes, you can't stop that. But here, then I would close the door and only open it up once a day for her to nurse her young. So I like this kind of a nest box. Again, it's wood. It's easy to clean. I disinfect it in the sun after scraping it out with a paint scraper. And I have just hooks that I've put on here, and they just hook right on. It's a 6x6 opening in the nest box, 6x6 opening in the cage. And then in the winter time, this is another thing that I do. In the wintertime, I use a trouble light. Now, they're not easily available anymore because I would use an incandescent 40-watt bulb. And an incandescent 40-watt bulb gives just enough heat to keep the kits alive, especially if you only have 1 or 2 or 3 born, which doesn't happen very often, but you don't want to lose them in a small litter, especially if I'm just showing them and I'm not after numbers. And what I would do is a few days before, when I put the nest box in place, what happens is I have just a bar here with holes in it. It's just a, not sure what the right word is for it. I can show you here. It's a metal, and it has 3 holes. You use it to connect things. I'm not sure what the right word is. If I can think of it, I'll post it later. So in the winter time, I take my treble light and I just hook it into that one of the slots in that bar, and then I pull it tight through and just keep it so that it's in the middle there, and I'll just wrap it around a hook and it'll stay there. I'll plug it in and it'll keep those kits alive in the coldest of weather. That bulb will just heat that wood just enough, and they'll go right to that spot. Wherever you put that bulb, that's where they're going to go. Old-fashioned treble light, but you have to get incandescent bulbs because the new bulbs today have no heat, and the old bulbs would just give a little bit of heat. Now there's another kind of nest box that I would use as well. And what did I do with that? I don't have that out. I better go get it. Now this is another nest box here that I've experimented with. I know the commercial guys use this kind of a system, and I modified it a little bit. Basically, they put the door on the nest box itself. I would still leave it the where it was and do it the way having it here. But with this nest box, what's unique about it is, so it has the wood portion, and same idea that it hinges on the top, the door closes. This top, I just use a fiber board, and I would just take it, just hold it on with a piece of wire and then take it off. In the winter, I leave it on. I never mentioned that before. In the winter, when it's cold, I leave the top on. There's a little bit of space, so they're getting some air, and the front is open where the dough comes in and out. But as I said, they like a dark spot. You'll have a lot better success with your litters, and if it's dark and easy to get at and to check the litters. What's different about this is that the bottom, instead of being wood, is plastic. And these are, you can buy them. And so I just, on the wood part, I just put a slot. You can see here the slots, and this is like a tray, and it just slides in. And what's unique about this kind of a nest box is that it's all plastic, and it has a wire mesh bottom and then a plastic top, and that all fits together. And between those two layers you would put shavings. I don't like using shavings, but chopped straw, and that leaves a layer there of insulation, and it keeps the kits dry. What I find is that with the wood nest boxes, at about a week to 10 days, I clean the nest box out. I keep the clean fur and I replace everything. I take the kits out, replace everything in the box. Then I don't have to use this kind of a box. But the idea here is it keeps them from getting wet from their own urine and that, especially if you have a big litter, 10 or 12 or something. It gets to be a problem in there. But I find it's easy when I have this kind of nest box, because I just close the door, I take the kits out, put them in a box, clean out the nest box, keep the good fur, put them back, fur, fresh stuff, and then they're good to go. I open the door, the doe didn't know any different, and she's happy still. So another kind of style. It's more expensive. I like the homemade stuff kind of, but it just fits together like that. And so just another idea. So one thing I failed to mention before was one of the advantages of this hanging nest box in the back of the cage with a single tier cage and a top open is that at 12 to 14 days of age, when the kits are about that age, they'll often be able to have enough strength to hang on to the mother when she comes out of the nest, and they get pulled out of the nest box. And when that happens, especially the other nest boxes that we were talking about, they're on the wire, they can't get back into the nest box, and they'll usually die within an hour, even in the summertime. In the winter, it's even shorter. They won't last long at all. And even in the summer, they'll die because they're born without fur. They don't have enough to keep each other warm. And so this solves that problem, and I'll explain why. Is because what you see here is that the lip here, from the floor to the top of the nest box, from this angle inside the cage, is only 2 inches. It's only 2 inches here. And if the kit gets pulled out and they're in the wire, they'll eventually find their way back in. It's only 2 inches to get over. That's no problem. The other nest boxes are about 6. And you have to have that height because there's about 6 inches or 7 here as well to keep them from getting out so easily and to keep them together. But if they get out on the wire, they'll wander around, and most of the time they'll find their way back into the box. They can actually do it. And that's the advantage of using this kind of a hanging nest box. I wouldn't lose as many in the winter and the other times of the year either. And so I hope that this has been helpful. Give me any comments or questions you have. I've tried to cover it all. There's so much here to cover. I'm on the tail end of my rabbit business. I'm winding it down, and so I can't even show you any rabbits today. But I still have this equipment, and I thought I should show how it works. I hope you get some tips. I hope there's some things you've learned. Thank you for watching. All the best.